is the Last Minute Blues podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
It is the Last Minute Blues podcast. Donnie Fandango joined in studio by Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN and Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. What I love about sports is how it routinely shows me, proves to me, reinforces to me that I don't know a goddamn thing about what I'm talking about. And it doesn't matter the sport. It really doesn't. When I give an absolute of some kind, it always blows up in my face.
Oh, so you're a jinx.
Oh, probably.
That's good.
And not even a smart one on top of it. Like, I just really, but I have for the last 2 weeks for sure. I mean, probably since even before the week before the Four Nations, I thought our Blues were done. You ride the roller coaster so many times, the wins, the losses, the not being able to get above 500, stay above 500, get a winning streak going, all of these sorts of things. And you just kind of go, you know what? I am at peace with this.
Yeah.
I'm at peace with it.
You were the only one that didn't believe in this team. Alex and I, for weeks, have been saying, just be patient. It's coming.
Well,
yeah, I told you that they were going to reel off a win streak at some point. In fact, I told you the dates.
But what's so crazy, okay, and I don't want to just say that I started this, but my son and I were at the Colorado game where I believe the streak started, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
So there was that. But the team looks different. They are giving other teams hell. Like, it is so crazy to me over the course of a week and a half how things look a lot different than they did before. And even the loss last night against Dallas, which was a bummer. But I would say a majority of that game, the Blues played pretty goddamn well. You're starting to see some really tremendous performances from your best players. The defense is, holy crap, they're scoring all the damn time. Guys, all of this said, and I love what I see, but at the same time, with the trade deadline on Friday, I don't think that we should dive into this thing as big buyers, thinking we're going to make a run or any of those. So, it just still seems, honestly, it feels like we're in this kind of weirdo purgatory that we have been in for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, that's, not to be the Debbie Downer with it, but that's trade deadline season, right? Like a lot of teams that don't want to see their team picked apart, you go on a little bit of a hot streak because you don't want your players to be traded away. I mean, we heard Robert Thomas say it on the morning show that, our job is to prove Doug Armstrong wrong to not trade these assets away. So this is where you're at. But I didn't expect it. Like, you exited that break with 6 straight games, and 4 of those 6 were against top teams in their conference or division. You had Winnipeg, Colorado, Washington, Dallas, L.A., and then Seattle. So you had Washington, where you got 2 points, Winnipeg, where you get a point. Basically, you probably should have got 2 points if you would have held on, but you didn't. You still got a point out of it. And then you find a way to beat L.A., and then the Dallas Stars, you lose that game. But you beat them at even strength. I would not have expected you to get 9 out of a possible 12 points in those 6 games to put you in this position. And I think you made up a 7-point difference in the standings. You exited out of the Four Nations tournament down 8 from the wild card spot, and because Calgary and Vancouver and Utah have played sub-500 hockey since then, and your point streak, you made up 7 points to put yourself 1 point out of it. It's wild.
Yeah, first of all, I want to tell you guys up front that I'm listening to every word you're saying this entire podcast, whether it goes 37 minutes, 42 minutes. If you see me peeking over at my phone, it's just to make sure there's no trades going on.
Oh, absolutely so.
That makes sense.
Look, we're on the YouTube now, so I'm like, look down.
Jerry's just going to put his phone right underneath the camera and just
let me put it up there. I'll put it right there just in case that thing goes off.
Just awkwardly stare
No,
at it.
Donnie, I just want to say that, we all three, myself, leading the charge, said, playoffs just look impossible at this point because, and I think we said this a couple times, even if you go 6-0, 7-1, it's hard to make up ground. But I think what we saw here in the past 10 days is the teams around them just not playing well. And we said that a couple months ago. The teams around them aren't good. The Blues could do this if they could go on a run. They just haven't been able to go on a run. I think this is the perfect storm of a few things. Alex mentioned a couple. First of all, the rest that they got during the break. I think that really benefited guys like Thomas, Buchnevich, some of these guys. Also, again, the teams around them not playing well. But what have we said this whole time? That this is a process with Jim Montgomery. Every day we see them in practice working on the details, the details. And I think that eventually you learn from that and you become a better team because everybody's focusing on the details, and now that process is starting to pay off. But the biggest thing is playing with purpose. I mean, you're playing some really good teams in this stretch, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm sitting there watching the games, and I feel like, okay, well, they just gave up a goal, but they're going to get a goal back because the way they're playing, they're going to get back into this game, and you feel like going into the Dallas game. Who would have thought 3 weeks ago that you would say, hey, that game, Dallas, second game back-to-back, played the night before, I feel good about their chances. Nobody would have done that, but yet even when they went down and the Dallas power plays scored its 9th power play goal of the night, you still feel like the Blues can get back into that game. It's just a much different team watching these days.
Jared, real quick, Jared nailed something for me too. The part for me that I'm not optimistic about that this team's going to go on a run or anything, it's the fact that they're playing what Jim Montgomery wants them to play.
Right.
Coming out of that Four Nations break, he talked about the habits, the details once again. He said goal lines are going to be important for us. Look at how good this team has been in their own end in terms of keeping high-danger scoring chances away, specifically at even strength after the power play nightmare last night. But then on the offensive side, this isn't 1 or 2 games where they play heavy forecheck with bodies in front of the net and then they disappear for the next 3. This is 6 straight games that they have been heavy on the forecheck, bodies in front of the net. Look at how they're scoring the goals. This isn't what, when Jim Montgomery took over, everyone's like, oh, well, they had a 5-game point streak then, too. Yeah, but we all remember that New Jersey Devils game, right? They shouldn't have won that game. Right. New Jersey just hammered them. The goaltending saved them. This has been 6 straight games where it's been they've been the better team at even strength against every opponent.
And so this is probably something that a fan does not really want to hear. But is what you just said and the Blues playing to Montgomery's philosophy, really dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and getting together the Blues way to play going forward and really entrenching that this year so it's ready for next year.
100%.
Is that as important as anything else? That's
number one.
Right,
it's absolutely number one. And who knows, if they can keep this up. But he's establishing this, and he's telling players, this is how we're going to play. If you want to be here, this is what you need to do. And you could look at next year's roster, and let's just say it's 6 or 7 guys different. That's fine. Okay, those guys moved on. They evolved the roster. But they established, going back to January, February, March of this season, the process and how they want to play. And the guys who are on the roster right now and are learning that and are going to be back next year will be better for this, regardless of if the Blues make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I care about playoffs, obviously. I want to see playoffs in St. Louis, and frankly, I think it's good for a lot of the guys on this team to get playoffs, like a Bolduc, a Jake Neighbors, a Broberg, a Holloway. But as much as I care about that, I care about the team playing consistent from now until the end of the season the way that we've seen. You've got to have some type of foundation to go into next year with, being we know how to play now. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of this is health. I don't think Pavel Buchnevich was 100%. I don't think Robert Thomas was 100%. That's why these guys are on point streaks from every single game since they've returned from the break. I think Jordan Binnington and Colton Parayko are playing with more confidence right now. But, man, none of that matters if you play well for 10 straight and then fall off and lose 5 of the next 6, and then you go into next year missing the playoffs, and you do the same thing. You can't start October, November, December, January playing 500 hockey and hope to get into the playoffs. So it's got to be about the foundation of this is the style we play and we can win, and that carries over into training camp next year. That leaks over into preseason. So then in October, you open up the way that the Dallas Stars opened up.
All right, so one of my big bugaboos, and we have talked about this on the podcast before, excuse me, and I'm not even sure with you guys, but I dislike Erik Karlsson, the hockey player, because he wins the Norris Trophy, but doesn't play any GD defense. That to me just blows my friggin' mind. That it to me means there should be 2 awards for the highest scoring defenseman, and then for anywho. But it always would frustrate me when I wouldn't hear Petro's name mentioned in that conversation. Well, now, let's start talking about Colton Parayko in that Norris Trophy conversation, because I don't know what has happened over the course of the last month or so, but this man looks as though that he has the most confidence that he has ever had in the time of me watching him as a player. The way that he is moving the puck down in the offense, guys, this is a great thing for us because we've got the horse. That's the number one. Can we finally call him a 1A for the love of freaking Pete?
Don't ask a lot of people that because they'll say no.
I know, but legitimately, we're watching it. I really feel like we're there.
Yeah. He is that guy. Like, okay, he's not Cal McCarr, those upper echelon, premier, Norris every year are going to get votes. But here in St. Louis, we sit. Donnie, here's the answer to your question. Who does Kipros do the pod with? Because I saw this clip somewhere
Justin
on social media. Was it Bourne or somebody?
Yeah,
so,
might have been somebody filling in for Justin.
Might have been
Bourne.
somebody filling in, but here's the answer to your question. They were sitting on the stage doing the podcast, and they looked at each other and they said, guys, we got to, really give Colton Parayko more credit. I had no idea that XYZ, and they started reading off stats and numbers that we've known for a year or two now, and it's like, are you serious? So people just don't watch/understand. If you have a name in the league already, and Colton Parayko's been in the league for a long time, I think people who, follow hockey, obviously they know of him and think he's a good to great player, but they don't put him in that category. And, you can't give him too much beef because, they're not watching every night. But you'd think if hockey is your job, you would know, the kind of work that he's putting in and the results that he gets for the St. Louis Blues. And it takes going to play for Team Canada. Honestly, it does. To kind of put your name on the map. And it's unfortunate that that's the way it is, but Colton Parayko is a great player. I think he's one of the better, shut down, and now he's adding the offense to his game. He's never going to have the points because he's not getting that power play time, but he's having a great offensive year nonetheless.
He is. I was Steve from Blues Clues there for a minute because I had to pull out my handy-dandy notebook because
That's so awesome.
I dive into this stuff nonstop. I feel like I've been harping on Binnington's being better than what people give him credit for, and Parayko has been for the last 3 years. So I was looking at this last night because I was curious where Parayko comes in because I heard Cam Fowler talk, I think it was 2 games ago, where he said, we kind of made an emphasis coming out of the break to make sure our defensemen were getting more involved on the offensive side. So in the 6 games, if you want to include last night against the Dallas Stars, that they've returned from play, they have scored 6 goals and had 16 assists, which is 22 points, which is best of any defensive core in the National Hockey League in terms of points that they've put up. Parayko falls into that since the break, tied for first in goals, overall goals, but he's first in even strength goals because I believe it's Carlson that's right there in front of him, but Carlson's got more power play goals. Mm-hmm. He's tied for third in points, and he's first in plus-minus among defensemen since the Four Nations break. This was the part that got me into the mindset of what Donnie's talking about. You're not going to beat McCarr, and frankly, I don't think you're going to get McCarr or Werenski in the Norris this year. Yeah. But I do think you should be in top 5 because when you take away the power play points, when you just focus on even strength time on ice for Colton Parayko, he's top 5 in minutes. And when you take the points out of Werenski's got 43 points. When you take the points away from McCarr, he's got 39. When you take the points away from Quinn Hughes, he's got 38. Colton Parayko at even strength this season has 34 points. So he is 4th in the National Hockey League amongst defensemen with even strength.
Look at that.
And he's top 5 in minutes.
Dude, your notebook, man.
See, I told you, Steve, I'm going to sit in my thinking chair and think.
And you can't tell he's got 3 kids under the age of 4 or 5 when he's doing Blues Clues references.
Dude,
right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right, so then in asking this about Colton Parayko and what we have seen from Cam Fowler, and now you've got Nick Leddy back, and you've got Falk. So can we talk about this defense as we're looking towards next year? Are you still trying to move pieces from this defense? Are you still trying to move that Falk contract? And then second question, or third, I don't know how many I even threw in there, is how are you feeling about the defense looking to next year and going into?
Did he say 7th question?
It was the 7th question.
7th question.
It very well could have been.
Yeah.
Once I get on the roll and they start firing off.
It felt like a press conference for Jim Montgomery. First question, and then third question, if you don't mind me.
That's when the
in there.
coach says, and what was your 4th question?
Wait, what did you ask the first one? I don't remember that.
I think the situation, Donnie, is with the defense is they'll explore and they'll see what they can do in terms of potentially moving, somebody, whether it be a Falk or Leddy or somebody. And if you can't, you can't. And this is still going to be a retool next year, I believe. And then they come back. But the biggest thing is you don't have anybody really who's ready to step in, other Lindstein's going to be another
Yeah, I mean,
at least a year.
I think the
right?
next two that would be here next year would be Kessel and Tucker.
Kessel, Tucker, Lindstein, those types of guys. So it's not like you can say, okay, go away, all these guys, and we're going to usher in these new. There just aren't a lot of guys, unless you're going to sign people, and then why are you doing that? Because then you're going to block some of those younger guys when they come in. So I think it's just you explore. If you find a deal for a Letty, a Falk, okay, yeah, you're going to save some money, and maybe you bring in somebody to take their spot for a year or two. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look and see because, 2 years ago, I didn't think the Blues were ever going to be able to change their defensive core. And look at what they did in 2 years. You bring in Fowler, you bring in Broberg, Ryan Suter, who's played really well, and I know probably wants to re-sign with St. Louis. So, that's 3 guys that I didn't think they were going to bring into kind of the core of it. If I'm the Blues, I'm looking at it saying, okay, well, let's look at what the future looks like. Is Falk a part of it? Is Letty a part of it? Because if they're not, maybe we look and see what's out there in terms of, can we find a destination for them to where maybe they got a shot at winning a cup, but you can usher in you gave Tyler Tucker a 2-year contract extension. Now, mind you, it was less than $1 million AAV, so it's not screaming like a top 4 defenseman, but you're going to want playing time for him. I have to imagine they're going to want more playing time for Matt Kessel next year, and you'll be in the same spot you were next year that you were this season, to where you had 9 guys, and you're like, man, who's getting all of the playing time? So part of me wonders if they're going to try and find a way to move somebody out to open up playing time. But I don't know what the interest is going to be around the league for the guys that you'd be willing to.
Yeah, and also salary. $4 million for Letty, 6.5 for Falk, and that's for a couple more years for Falk. 1 more year for Letty.
Yeah.
So that's what $11-12 million. So if you can move them out and get playing time for those young guys, but then it all comes back. It's always going to come back. You're trying to be competitive next year because, I'm not saying Falk and Letty are going to get you to the playoffs. All I'm saying is that probably a better shot than Kessel, Tucker, 3, 4.
I will say, because I was thinking about this, and I'm curious both of your guys' thought. The last time we felt this good about a top 3 of your defensemen was what? The 2019 Cup run, where you had Alex Pietrangelo, Jay Bouwmeester, and Colton Parayko. Parayko was 26. Pietrangelo, I think, was 29. And then Bouwmeester was 33, 34 years old. Are you putting this same top 3 in the same conversation as those guys in terms of Parayko, Fowler, and Broberg?
No. Those guys just so good. And obviously we connect everything to the cup. And
and they had proven it a bit beforehand more that they were guys. But still, you got to feel good about it.
Oh, you got to feel good about it for sure. Yeah. I just don't know what the future with Fowler is. Like, Parayko's going to be here, you would think.
Yeah.
And
like
Broberg.
Parayko and Broberg are the ones that are
Parayko and Broberg. Yeah. If Fowler's got 1 more year left, and maybe he's gone after that.
Couldn't Fowler kind of fall into the Bouwmeester conversation too, though? Because Bouwmeester, there was a time where it felt like this guy's not going to be able to be healthy enough. And then he re-signs that contract. He comes back, and he's good for you up until – that was my only thought process. It's like Fowler seems – like Bouwmeester is a better all-around defenseman, don't get me wrong, but Fowler brings more offense to it and has been fine in the top pair. Parayko gives you that alpha feel, to your point that you were making, Donnie, of can we finally call him a 1A? And Broberg's 3 years younger than what Colton Parayko was when they won the Stanley Cup. So, again, I'm not saying it's the same thing because that one's got 2 Hall of Famers, maybe 3, depending on what Parayko's career looks like.
Right.
And this one, maybe you're talking 1. Still pretty good, though.
We always ask a question, what's going to be the headline for the podcast? We just got it, Parayko, the Hall of Famer. Alex just said.
Norris Trophy and Hall of Fame.
Boom. Right there.
You're welcome.
Well, good. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. So honestly, though, as we're here in this room, as diehard Blues fans that want to see what's best for our team, we will be selling this week and not buying at the trade deadline. Correct? Correct.
If you would have asked me that question 2 weeks ago, I would have said you wouldn't have even finished the sentence.
Right.
I would have said correct. I don't know. To me, it makes more sense to look at this team big picture and say, I'm not going to invest pieces of the future to buy something for the now. Because just like when they traded Paul Stastny, they were Doug Armstrong was pretty adamant about we don't think this team has a run in them, and so we got to build for the future. And they traded Stastny, got a first-round draft pick that I believe essentially turned into Brayden Schenn, if I'm not mistaken. This team wants to make the playoffs. Look at all the moves that they've made this season. You do the offer sheets, you bring in Cam Fowler in the middle of the season. I don't know if they're going to be satisfied missing the playoffs, but does that mean you buy? Or does that mean you just stand pat and say, we'll see what happens, like they did in the 2019 Cup run and just added a little piece? But after reading your piece today, JR, where you had the execs and the scouts kind of who says no with those trade conversations, man, some of those deals that were in there that the execs were like, yeah, I could see this one working. if you're asking me what's better for the future of the Blues, some of those trades definitely set the Blues up for more success 2, 3, 4 years from now.
Yeah, the bottom line is, I think, regardless of where their Blues are in the standings, is Doug Armstrong, and he always will, have a view of the big picture. And, when they drop the puck at the start of next season, who's still on this roster, I think you need to keep that in mind when you're making these decisions this week with the emotion of trying to make the playoffs. Because if you still have pieces around next year who probably shouldn't be here, who probably aren't a part of the future, and you only kept them because you wanted to make the playoffs, and, oh, by the way, you missed by 2 points or you got knocked out in the first round, these decisions have to be made with the big picture in mind. I'm going to dramatize this just to make the point.
Nice.
When you talk about, when people talk about, are they going to buy? As Alex said, they want to make the playoffs. Doug wants to make the playoffs. They're not buying in terms of there's going to be some big splash this week where you see this high-level prospect go and Mikko Rantanen's coming and saying, or, I'm dramatizing.
Snuggerud Dvorsky's not getting traded this weekend.
That's not happening. Now, because I don't want to say they're not going to buy and then somebody goes, hey, they bought that player from San Jose.
Suck it, JR.
Okay, so, yeah, they brought this middling guy in to play middle six forward to help them try to get to the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, that's a possibility. I personally think, making some phone calls, get some pieces coming out the next couple of days, it feels like right now they're probably staying pat, right? And that doesn't mean Brayden Schenn can't be traded. It looks like a situation where they're still evaluating that. But when you talk about the Roddick Foxes and the Ryan Suiters, if you're 1 point out, you have to keep them. You're not giving them up for a fourth-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And
those do nothing for you.
It doesn't do anything for you. So if I'd rank them, I think they're going to stand pat. If they lose the next couple games, they could sell.
Yeah.
And then if they are buying, I think it's the buy that I described as kind of middling.
And here's the only thought that I had, and I'm just asking this because what they can't have happen is miss the playoffs by 2 points and then draft 16th overall. Like, that does nothing for them. That puts you in purgatory. You have 0 picks other than the first round until I think it's the 5th round in this upcoming draft. How much does that first round pick really mean to you? And what I'm saying is, I don't think it's going to be a top 10 pick, but obviously crazier things can happen. But what does a 12th overall pick do for you right now as an organization? What does a 15th overall pick do for you as an organization? Like, if you miss the playoffs by 2 points, I think that puts you in a worse spot than what you would be if you either make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round or you're drafting in the top 10. So I guess what I'm asking is, shouldn't that first-round pick be a weapon for you to use at the trade deadline and looking for something to help you get to the playoffs? And you could do the protections on it, whether it's top 10 protected, top 15 protected, whatnot. But I just don't understand what that first-round pick does for you. Like, obviously, your pipeline doesn't need to get bare, but even Doug Armstrong has said, like, we're done accumulating assets. Now we need to take these assets and put them into the NHL position.
So what you're saying then is taking that first-round pick, using it as a chip to get something to help push you into the playoffs.
And not just a rental. Something that can get you to the playoffs this year, but is here next year, like you mentioned, JR. And I don't know, maybe this is a part of a package. Maybe I'm just like thinking like a fan and being like, oh, you need to buy. I just don't understand what that first round pick does for you this draft. Scouts have said that this draft is kind of weaker. That's why a lot of these trades that have already taken place in the NHL, you're seeing 2026 draft picks get traded. So let's hypothetically say you go on a run, but you miss by 3 points and you miss the playoffs. Cool, you're drafting 16th overall. Does that really help you? And maybe it's better at the draft when you can trade it so that guys can actually put names on the position that you're picking. But, man, if there's something out there that makes you better now, because in my opinion, you're better than Calgary, Vancouver, and Utah already. That's the wild card spot. You just have to play consistently to that level. Wouldn't you want to try and find some reinforcements for your team?
Yeah, I guess I just wonder what age that player is, because if you're trading that first-round pick to get a 28-year-old who's going to be 31 by the time you're ready to be a playoff contender, then it might not be worth it. There was not to keep referencing the piece with the fans sending in the trade proposals, but one of them was a first-round pick to Seattle for Matty Beniers, who was a first-round draft pick a couple years ago for Seattle, and maybe not having the greatest season. He's 22, 23. He's a guy, although the exec and the scout
the exec said
poo-pooed that deal.
But they did say, you just need to put more into it.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, okay, well, what else needs to go into it?
So if you can trade a first-round pick for, obviously, a young player who's got a high ceiling like a Matty Beniers, then maybe that's the potential. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, what's this first-round draft pick going to do in terms of getting you back into it? But I guess it all depends on who's coming back. And I will say this, Donnie, too, is that He mentioned that the Blues don't have second, third,
fourth round, I think.
Fourth round.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a bad thing because we're not going to do the draft in person this year. Usually I go to whatever city the draft is going to be. So this year, I think they're going to have a draft watch party. At least the media will be down at Stiefel.
Oh, yeah.
And guess who else is going to be at Stiefel that night? Chicago. I don't know if you're a Chicago fan.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so if we can break away for an hour during the second, third, fourth round.
I even know Chicago. I'm in.
Let me tell you something. So about 10 years ago, I bought my dad I think it was a 7-disc Chicago box set. And that dude listens to that thing like it is brand goddamn new, man. And I am not like, I don't love Chicago, but I love a good horn section. You know what I'm saying? So I would go for the horn section.
That's a good horn.
First
like alone
to go to together as a group.
Man, I hell yeah, I'm in. Sign me up, dude. That sounds great.
He's gonna be miming playing a trombone the entire time we're there.
So Blues
100%.
do not acquire any draft picks in the second, third, fourth round.
Actually trade 5th, 6th, and 7th so that we could just straight go to Chicago for that second day.
Okay, so real question though. All right, and I'm putting you two on the spot because you know what you're talking about.
We said they won't make the playoffs.
As of Saturday, will Brayden Schenn be a member of your St. Louis Blues? And, follow up 1B. If he's going somewhere, give me one of the teams that he could be going. And I know Toronto is one of those teams.
Yeah.
I would kind of like to see that happen, but I kind of would like to see the Leafs go on a run. I might be the only one there.
I say no. I don't think a team is going to give the package for Brayden Schenn to make it worthwhile. There were 2 on that piece that you had, which people should go check it out. It was really good. That I would be like, ooh, that's going to be tough. It was the deal from the LA Kings and the deal from the New Jersey Devils. I don't think teams are going to be willing to part with that. All of this stuff, the speculation from the Toronto Maple Leafs of like, oh, they're going to give up Fraser Minton in a first round. Who cares? No, I'm not trading any of that for Brayden Schenn. And I'm not making it out to be Brayden Schenn as this number 1 elite centerman. Like, we know what Brayden Schenn is. But Brayden Schenn is better for your team than a prospect who's playing in the American Hockey League right now. So I say no. I think Schenn's on this team after the trade deadline. The offseason, though, I would say I'm not sure yet.
And that's when it goes to 15 teams for his no-trade clause. Right now, he's got a full no-trade, so he can veto
the same with Falk and Leddy, too.
Those guys, too, yeah. I think he'll still be here, but this is what I'm basing it on. So when this podcast airs later today, and then Saturday he's gone,
or he gets traded at 2 o'clock when we drop the podcast.
Yeah.
Come on!
I think he's going to be here, but a couple things. Probably wouldn't have said that a week ago. Obviously, the winning has changed things. Like, can you imagine? And he's such a popular guy in the locker room, Brayden Schenn. Like your neighbors, Bolduc, all these guys who are looking forward to making this playoff push and try to get in, and then all of a sudden you wake up and your captain's gone, and you lose your next couple games, you don't make the playoffs. I mean, that's just a tough situation. And then, I'll go back to what Alex said is, remember last year, I think it came out where Doug said that, Buchnevich, I did mention his name, but I was waiting for the motherlode offer.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what he's looking for with Schenn too, and our team's going to do that. And a lot of times you like the term, you like to have a player who's coming to you and he's got 2 or 3 or 4 years, but with Brayden Schenn, he's got 3 years. It's going to take you to 36. Are you giving up the mother load to the Blues to get a guy who's going to be 36?
And that's why I think all of this that we've been hearing, and by the way, this is silly season, so don't believe anybody that's saying Colton Parayko's on the trade block or Jordan Binnington is. I don't think that's possible, especially after watching Hofer struggle against Dallas. I don't know if you're in a position to trade Jordan Binnington. I believe Doug Armstrong has just let teams know I'm willing to listen. Mm-hmm. But those teams need to call and give you a good offer. Otherwise, he's not getting traded. And frankly, that is what Doug Armstrong should do. If you close the door and say, no, we're not trading any of our pieces, well, then how are you trying to better your team? So I think teams are going to call, and it just comes down to does somebody get desperate enough? Because teams that need to win the Stanley Cup, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the New Jersey Devils, Carolina, teams that need to win the Stanley Cup that don't have a lot of wiggle room, they get desperate.
Well, now in New Jersey, don't you got a Hughes injury to worry about?
Right,
Which that can throw a wrench into this whole thing. How do you guys see specifically the West shaking out? I know we've talked about this before. We have had the Winnipeg conversation a few different times on the podcast. But is a team like Vegas just kind of lying in the wait? Like, are they, and I hate saying it, but did you see the look on his face? That was great. But, like, are they just kind of sort of waiting to make their big move that sort of pushes them up top? And then also, too, you are the Edmonton Oilers, and it's another year And here we are, and we're talking about your goaltender friggin' again.
Yep.
So can we just kind of talk about the West a little bit?
Yep.
And then also, Jiminy Christmas, Pedersen in Vancouver. What is going on with this freaking guy? Are they going to end up moving him in the offseason because he seems like such a mercurial blah, blah, blah?
Yeah, well, to your Vegas question, does a rooster crow in the morning?
Yeah.
It's going to happen. I think I saw somebody put a tweet out say, congratulations, Vegas. You made it through February without putting Mark Stone on LTIR. Like, it's going to happen. It's just, I saw that, I think it was Darren Dreger that said, like, hey, Vegas is interested in Brayden Schenn. Of course they're interested. They're interested in everybody who makes north of $6 million. So that's going to happen. I think Winnipeg is the juggernaut, and I think Dallas is the juggernaut in the West. I don't think anybody from the Pacific has the same feel to them. Edmonton, you got McDavid and Draisaitl, so I can't doubt you, but Bouchard hasn't been playing well, and they seem to be wanting to stick with Stuart Skinner. And frankly, if I'm another team, you don't have anything to give me that I'd be willing to give you my goaltender for. Like, if I'm Anaheim with John Gibson, I'm not trading you John Gibson for some mid-tier prospect that you have. You traded all your dudes, and you wouldn't sign your dudes with the offer sheets of Holloway and Broberg. So I think it's going to be Winnipeg, and they were talking about on the broadcast last night, man, don't sleep on Dallas. Dallas is going to make some type of trade because they have like $18 million in cap space available to them because of the injuries to Heiskanen and Sagan. And then Heiskanen and Sagan are probably going to be back by the playoffs. So you add a piece. Let's say they add I think I saw that they were interested in Seth Jones before he was traded to Florida.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that they were interested in Erik Karlsson. They'll add something, and then you put Sagan back on that team, Heiskanen back on that team. You've got Ottinger. You've got Johnston, who's playing well. I would say Winnipeg's my top dog in the West. Dallas is probably tied for first.
Yeah. Hey, I keep looking at my phone. I texted some friends and I said, "Hey, can you text me during the show?" So I'm looking down at it constantly.
Make it look
just
like
look it down.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I need to start doing that this JR.
Make it look like you're busy?
Yeah, so the last 4 texts have been from friends. Just glancing
close enough,
down.
I guess.
I only have 4 friends.
4 more than I have.
No, I agree. Winnipeg's got to prove it to you, right? They've been so good all year.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep it up as long as they've been keeping it up. So we'll see. But I like Dallas, especially Andre. Great. Still young goaltender, and he got the experience, played the one game with the Four Nations, but, kind of big atmosphere.
He was good in the playoffs 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Got into the conference finals.
And all the players that Alex mentioned that could be back, and love Johnston. You saw the power play hat trick last night.
Just unbelievable,
by
that
him.
guy. God.
But Vegas for sure, too. I remember we have to do the playoff predictions throughout the year. We have to say who's our dark horse for the Cup, who's going to win the Cup. And at one point I said, holy smoke. Not only is Vegas my dark horse, but I think they could win the Cup.
Yeah.
So they're kind of both. But Winnipeg, Vegas, Dallas from the West.
It's so amazing how this is all shaken out.
I
I mean, and this week is going to be such a big deal because teams are going to have to really be like, all right, we're selling or we're buying, we're in or we're out. So we'll probably get a little bit of clarity
There's
there
not
as
a whole
well.
lot of sellers, I think, this year at the deadline. Like, I think a lot of the pieces that were sellers are already gone. Like, Seth Jones was a big piece.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of sellers this year at the deadline, which makes it pretty intriguing with what the Blues have.
And it's so amazing, too, about that Seth Jones deal, real quick. And you've got a team in Florida that is beat up a little bit, that has obviously had these long playoff runs the last couple of years. And then you bring in Seth Jones, and I'm not saying he'll be your 1A, but he is going to be a guy that you would think is going to be so goddamn stoked to not be on the Blackhawks anymore. You might get a little bit
kind of Fowler-esque.
Kind of freshen you up a little bit
Yep.
if you got some tired legs in that room. That team, man. Ooh,
And
boy.
especially a guy who logs so many minutes. What is he, 25 minutes a
yeah.
night?
Like a Parayko on steroids.
And wherever you plug him in on Florida, he's going to be great because he's capable of doing that. It's like Fowler when he came in, he was 21, 22 minutes in Anaheim, and now even if you only need him 19. And they could have played him in the second pair. He's been a great fit in that top pair. But my point being that if you have a guy who comes in and he's already used to logging a lot of minutes, it's a lot easier to come in and play a lesser role and log less than to do what they were doing.
I love, just side note, I love how Bill Zito runs that organization. And I think Mark Lazarus put a piece out that basically said, like, Chicago should probably take some advice from Florida's GM rather than just sell everything off. I mean, I was reading this piece today that was talking about, like, hey, we've got the cake already baked. Seth Jones is just the frosting.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning I've got the core in place. I've got Barkov. I've got Reinhardt. I've got Kachuk. I've got Forsling. I don't need Seth Jones. Seth Jones is so that we can get a Stanley Cup. And think of what they're doing. Ekblad is walking out after this year probably.
Yep.
Seth Jones steps in. You got a 26, 27-year-old defenseman for a guy who's going to be 30. So I love how Bill Zito operates, and I just frankly hope a lot more teams operate the same way and just are aggressive with moves rather than wait.
And it's aggressive, but it's this is so weird to say, but it's not aggressive in the same way that the Las Vegas Golden Knights are aggressive. That pisses us all off.
Yeah.
I guess because they're not.
Well, they cheat though.
They're not using LTIR like.
Well,
like
they
Vegas
don't.
is. Okay.
They don't cheat. I guess they're actually following the rules.
Yeah.
Oh!
Mark Stone on
it's
LTIR?
my mom. No, it's my mom.
Oh.
I thought it was a big trade.
Insiders.
Got me. All right, guys, what do you say? Maybe we do this one more time after the trade deadline?
Only
or what are we
one more
going to
and
do?
then we're done. Just shutting it down.
All right. Well, for the incredibly hilarious Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic, Donnie Fandango from 105.7 The Point, to our homeboy Jeff Burton, who we miss so much. It's the Last Minute Blues podcast, and as always, let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.